So Democrats are crying foul again after Republicans said that ballots have to be in on, wait for it, Election Day. This is The Brink. And remember, folks, to like, comment, and subscribe if you like me and you like what we do here. And if you love it, you should also become a Daily Caller Patriot. There's a link in the description below. Lots of great exclusives. You don't want to miss it. So North Carolina Republicans, they eliminated the 3-day grace period for mail-in ballots, meaning all ballots have to be delivered before the polling stations close on Election Day. And per usual, Democrats are now claiming that this will somehow make elections less fair and safe, and have even gone on to call Republicans extremists. But let's go over the actual facts. So back in 2020, there was a 5-member majority Democrat board that agreed to give the state's Board of Elections Director, Brinson Bell, the power to extend the day, which, mind you, is set by state law, for which ballots can be received. So she extended it from November 6th to November 12th. Brinson also allowed for absentee ballots that were missing information to still be counted. So 2 huge problems, right? First, ballots were missing information and were still counted, and North Carolina was not the only state we saw this in. Second, an unelected official was changing election rules. So Republicans, they end up winning a majority in the state legislature, and they say, no, we're not going to get the legislative authority be usurped by partisan officials, right? People who are not elected, they're appointed. And look, everyone knows well in advance when an election is. If someone is using an absentee ballot, they should be sending it in well in advance, that they don't need the extra 3 days. And think about it in 2 ways, right? 1, what if the election day was pushed back 3 days? Would these people then want another 3 days? Or would voters then have enough time to vote if you just push the general election back, which at that point, why don't you just inform the voters earlier? 2, all these Democrats, they say it's unfair. If voting rights organizations care so much about the voters, then they will work with the voters to let them know when the election is, when the deadline is, and when they should send their absentee ballots in so that it does not arrive late. It's really not that hard to do. If you need an extra 3 days, just work 3 days back. And this is a very similar issue to what we had seen in Pennsylvania back in 2020, when then Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar had these same kind of procedural problems, right? And Republicans in the state, to their credit, they tried to challenge it. But by the time their appeal made it to the Supreme Court, the case was ruled moot. Now, of course, Clarence Thomas said, let's hear it. The other justices said, no. And that's where we are. But kudos to Republicans in North Carolina who are getting ahead of the game to ensure election integrity, even if it means Democrats will try to smear their name. And speaking of Pennsylvania, President Biden is trailing Trump by 9 points in the battleground state, which, mind you, Biden won in 2020. Now, this is tremendous. So Biden won by less than 2 percentage points. It was such a narrow margin of victory. It wasn't the only state we saw one like this. But the poll, which was conducted by Emerson College, it also found more bad news for Biden. So 31% of Pennsylvanians approve of Biden's job, while a whopping 51% disapprove. Again, this is a really bad sign for Biden. Most presidents, they need Pennsylvania to win the presidency. And speaking of the Biden administration, I do want to turn our attention toward good old John Kirby. So Kirby said that the $6 billion we gave to Iran can be refrozen at any time. Have a listen.
That money can be refrozen at any time.
Doesn't that seem like a good time to do that?
We won't hesitate to make that decision if we feel we need to, but I'm not going to get ahead of a policy decision that hasn't been made yet.
Okay, so he says that if the time is right, they would do it. And look, maybe it's because in part they can't confirm reporting from the Wall Street Journal that Iran was directly involved. But then John Kirby says this.
Hamas wouldn't have been able to function at all had it not been for propping up by the Iranian regime, but we haven't seen any specific evidence that tells us they were witting, involved in the planning, or involved in the resourcing and the training that went into this very complex set of attacks over the weekend.
So this is what doesn't add up to me. So Kirby is saying that Hamas could not have carried these terrorist attacks out without Iran. And then he says that there is no direct evidence linking Iran to the attacks. But if you're so confident that there was some involvement with Iran, why have we not refrozen the funds? And I'm not asking this to be like a wise ass. I'm genuinely curious, what is the strategic move behind this? If you say that there's no doubt that that Hamas needed help, why have we not refrozen the funds? And speaking of the war, I want to talk about a badass Republican congressman who I feel like is doing more to help Americans in Israel than our own government. So Florida Republican Representative Corey Mills, he flew to Israel and he told the Floridian that he has already helped rescue 32 Americans, but said that there are hundreds more. Mind you, this is the same man that back in 2021, he literally flew a plane to Afghanistan to help rescue other Americans and help them evacuate. Badass American. He's just a badass American who puts America first. He's a freedom-loving patriot, clearly, and we love to see it. We're hoping for a safe return of Mills, all the Americans trapped in Israel, and everyone over there fighting in a fight for their life. Folks, more tomorrow on The Brink.